right, YouTube. Week 1 is almost in the books. This podcast is now in the books. Colorado stole the show. Anything else to add, guys?
UNC is a
They
defense.
coming. They here.
Comment, like, subscribe, enjoy. All right, hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast. TCU Talk.
We are presented by High Noon Hard Seltzer. It is officially week 1, but we still have games Sunday and Monday, but whatever, Saturday night, you've been watching games all day, start to finish. I hope you've been drinking your High Noon, whether it's the vodka or the tequila. The game day pack is officially out soon-ish. It's supposed to come out Labor Day. Make sure you're grabbing it. Drizly, your liquor store, convenience store, High Noon Sun Tips, you know where to get it. Official first reaction podcast. So if you're listening to this right now before you go to sleep, hopefully you're having a high noon. And if not, you wake up tomorrow, you watch more football, you have a high noon. So welcome in everybody to the first reaction podcast, Brandon. It feels like, and I'm sure everybody on this podcast feels, this day was long, was great. A lot of things to talk about. And the middle
Was
day,
it great?
No, I'm not going to let her say that either. Listen, there were parts of today that was great, but my God, this was a bad opening week.
the afternoon, I was going to say the afternoon slate was awful. There was a chunk of time that I just
The nighttime slate wasn't good.
No, but I mean, the beginning of North Carolina, South Carolina was a good game, obviously got out of hand. But
I don't want to be disrespectful.
The biggest game at night was West Virginia, Penn State. And West Virginia, it took all they had just to be competitive in that game. Now, James Franklin was a true cunt at the end, but it was everything they had to be competitive. South Carolina, North Carolina was okay, but really it was just two mediocre-ass teams slogging back and forth. There was one huge, great highlight game of this day. And I'm sure when we get to the end where we do who won the week, who lost the week, we're going to probably say this guy's name and this team's name multiple times. But Colorado TCU was the absolute apex of this day. And they're going to get their flowers and we're going to give them their flowers. But if you look across the country, Michigan was mediocre. Ohio State was average. Georgia played nobody. Alabama played nobody. Colorado and TCU carried the day, but if this sport is going to be a made-for-TV event like it's planning itself to be with these new mega conferences, they got to give us more to eat on week 1, because tomorrow night we're going to have a great game with LSU Florida State. That's great. But after 2:30 today, if you went to sleep, I don't think you missed anything.
no, and by the way, when I say it's great that college football is back, and the amount of people, again, I know we've retired the know or don't know ball thing as we've all agreed that it's super lame. The people that were giving me shit because on the college football show, I said that this week isn't a good slate on paper. They're like, oh, I believe the tweet was real ball watchers don't care, which is the lamest thing I've ever heard. But you're right. If TCU would have killed Colorado, which a lot of people anticipated to happen, there would have been nothing today to really stand out as that highlight. We know what we're going to talk about. We know what the headlines are. It's great college football is back, but this is what everyone was saying. This day is not special. Now, tomorrow night, if that game lives up to the hype, different story. But sitting here, it's like, okay. Like I said, the afternoon slate was, literally nothing happened, in my opinion.
I just wish we had seen Michigan play somebody. I wish we'd have seen Ohio State play somebody. I wish we'd have seen Georgia play somebody. I wish we'd have seen Alabama play somebody. I wish we'd have seen anybody in that top 10.
Do you wish Mississippi State would have played somebody? Because I feel that way about A&M.
No, because I don't think many opening weeks are going to come and the nation's going to be talking about what Mississippi State did that day.
Well, no, but I'm saying just in general, like I couldn't even get excited halfway through my own game because
I just think the sport needed its marquee names to be in marquee games.
Mm-hmm.
And Deion is a marquee name by himself, and he made a marquee statement. But I know it's not technically Georgia's fault. Georgia was going to play Oklahoma, but the SEC said no, you can't play that game. But nobody's stopping Michigan or Ohio State, and Ohio State played a conference game. But I don't know. It's just if you're gonna be a TV product, you need to be better than what college football gave us as far as the slate goes. But college football is back, and that's all that matters. The next 15 weeks, they will give us plenty of memories and plenty of games, next week looks awesome. So it's not, I'm not really complaining, but I'm kind of complaining. Like, college football didn't put its best foot forward. That's
Well,
all.
the
only thing is, how do you fix that? You discuss the governing body, and the governing body that we've had for however many years hasn't been great. And
that's putting it lightly, by the way.
yeah, and I mean, I see what you're saying. I made the point on the podcast on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever we recorded, that I don't mind it because I don't want to blow my load too early, but it did feel as if this weekend, like you said, was just bleh.
Okay.
And somebody told, I was watching at Barstool, and someone was like, man, since the Colorado game ended, I haven't been excited about a moment after. There was like spread drama, but that's not why we watch college football.
I think week one generally you can be trusted for like 3 or 4 Colorado TCUs.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been one other game that was close to as good, and that was Fresno Purdue, and that was in the same window. I'm just going to read of the top 25 teams. Here are the teams that the top 25 teams played today and this week. Middle Tennessee State, West Virginia, South Carolina, those are decent. New Mexico, Southeast Missouri State, Nevada, Tennessee Martin, Boise, strong game right there, Tennessee State, Rice, Buffalo, Indiana, Presbyterian, Mercer, Arkansas State, Colorado, that's a good one, Utah State, ECU, Virginia, Florida, and San Jose State.
Not good.
San Jose State was last week, actually, but that's who the ranked teams played today. It's what it is. Not going to complain anymore. We got college football back, and the next 15 weeks will be amazing. And I think there's no mystery here. There's no drama as to who stole the weekend, as to who carried the load. I mean, we had conversation back and forth. Would Deion be this? Would Deion be that? Could TCU repeat? I thought most of the Barstool love affair with Deion was an extreme case of meat riding, but it was not. Deion came out and won a gigantic game, 45-42, and there are several highlights to this game. I think I got to start with – first, let's start with Deion, because what Deion did was frowned upon by a lot of the establishment. He walked into a place with one win. He basically kicked everybody to the curb and said, I'm going to get better players. And he brought in 50 players. And if it didn't work, he would look bad. But through 1 week, it did work, Casey. It did work.
I have to applaud you that you just came right out and ripped the Band-Aid off and said that you just assumed that it was all meat riding because of the friends and family aspect of Deion. But I mean, even, we talked about it on the college football show. We talked about it on this podcast. I didn't think they were going to win the game. I didn't think it was going to be as out of hand as the spread looked. I mean, the fact that TCU was favored by almost 3 touchdowns was crazy to me. But then again, in the back of my head, I was like, there is that bias. I know that. I know that I'm being biased right here. I can't potentially admit otherwise. However, what we saw today was that Deion did what Deion has always done in his career, whether he's been playing, when he's been coaching at each different level, is he says he's going to do something, he goes out and he does it. And whether he continues to do it every week is yet to be seen. But for it to happen in week 1 against the runner-up, now granted they got killed in the national championship, but the runner-up in the national title game last year, and I know it's a different team, but he just shut everybody up, because there's nothing you can say about Deion Sanders in Colorado today that's not just like, holy shit, he said this was going to happen, and here we are. And it wasn't just him. It wasn't just his son. It was across the board, just an absolute shock to people who didn't expect that.
And I do want to, I'm very wrong. There's a clip of me saying like there is no chance that they're going to make a bowl game, and Dave was getting on Brandon, but I do want to say there's one take that Brandon did have about Travis Hunter. He's better than I think any of us even expected. He said like, oh, yeah, you said in the Pac-12 preview, oh, there's a chance we talk about him as the best player. And that happened in week 1. It's what he did today was, we'll do winners of the week and whatnot. Is that one of the best college football games outside of a quarterback we've seen? Maybe Devonta Smith had some games I'm not remembering.
Yeah.
What he did today was insane.
Let me tell you
playing
something.
over 100 snaps on both, like
in 100-degree weather, right?
Yes, like, and
he didn't look tired.
So
I mean, how does his body allow him to do that? I know that sounds so stupid, but like, how was he physically able to do that?
we have seen guys in the history of football play both ways. Deion himself in his pro career played both ways at times for play receiver. But when Deion played receiver, he was a good option. He was a good third or fourth receiver, but he was never the number one guy. Maybe he could have been if he only played receiver, but when he played both ways, he was never the number one guy. You give him the ball in certain packages, he could do some things. Travis Hunter was the best player when he was on offense. And Travis Hunter was the best player when he was on defense. That's a fact. Travis Hunter affected the game defensively, and on offense, he had 11 catches for 119 yards. That's not just playing every snap. That's dominating. He right now in this country, after one day, is one of the best receivers in the country. And he might be the best cornerback in the country.
They were having the conversation during the game of like which one he's better at. And they were going back and forth of like, well, I mean, he's really good at receiver, but like they have other options, but he's really good in the secondary too. And at the end of the day, it was like they couldn't pick because every time the ball was either caught or there was really good coverage against TCU, it was Travis Hunter every single time.
I don't know if you, Jack, I don't know if you noticed this, but I almost wanted to grab my TV and say, stop throwing his way. They kept throwing at him. And that interception he had on the goal line where he just jumped the route and stole it from the receiver, that's an otherworldly play. That's not a human play at cornerback. You don't see that.
His body control was insane on that because he was going like the opposite way and essentially stopped and went the other way. But there was no time of his body stopping and then going the other way. It was just video game like. But he also, those stats you all read, could have looked a lot better because it wasn't necessarily his fault that he dropped this ball. It was a tough catch. But he almost had a touchdown in the first half where he dove and he just barely missed it. And also, I mean, Shadur Sanders, like, I don't.
38 of 47.
500 yards.
510 yards, 4 touchdowns.
I don't know if he had a bad. There wasn't like balls where it's like, oh, that should have been intercepted.
Frankly, he also had probably about 3 throws that were right on target that didn't get caught. That were like right out of bounds. Like he was perfect. He was just about perfect.
38 of 47. And you talk about the 2 drops that Travis Hunter had. I mean, the quote that Deion had at halftime where he, it was like, of course, went viral because it was in Deion's form, but he was like, if he wouldn't have had those 2 drops, the Heisman would be sitting in his crib right now. Like, it's so accurate. And what was so funny to me was that, and I'm not going to sit here and try to dunk all over everybody because I know that I'm being biased because of Deion, but there were still people trying to downplay what Travis Hunter did on Twitter today because it's like, well, you guys are just loving what they're doing against TCU, but it's a bad team. It's like this kid played over 100 snaps and affected the ball on both sides and didn't get tired. I do not understand it.
Well, whether TCU is a bad team or not, and I don't know, I doubt history will judge them as a bad team. Colorado won 1 game last year. They won 1 game last year. So they have equaled last year tonight. On September 3rd, they have caught last year. And that is with Nebraska coming up next. That is with a whole lot of there's games on the schedule that might not have looked winnable 24 hours ago, but guess what? They do right now. Because when they take the field, they're going to have better players than a lot of teams. Like they're going to have the best player every Saturday. That's Travis Hunter. And their quarterback is fantastic. He makes great throws. Listen, last year I saw a stat. I guess everybody saw a stat because we watched the same game. They had 2 receivers in 2022 with 100-yard games. They had 4 today. They had Edwards, Hunter, Weaver, and Horn all had 100 yards. Hunter and Horn both had 11 catches. Like, they spread it out. Does that say Shiloh Sanders had a catch, or is that Shadur Sanders?
Shadur.
Well, Shiloh led in tackling, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he did.
Both of Deion's sons doing that. But I mean, Dylan Edwards had 5 catches for like 140 yards.
I mean, that kid, there's so many guys that we should give their flowers to, but that kid's a true freshman. And he came in, and when he was running around, I was like, is that one of the transfer portal guys? And then I look and I was like, oh no, he's a true freshman. And I guess he's known Deion forever.
And he's also, I think he might be the fastest man on earth.
Oh yeah.
insane.
He didn't even look right when he caught some of those balls. And
I will say, and this is a question for the room. If I think this team has a chance to be, if they go into that USC game with a very good record, that game against USC, if it's timed properly and there's nothing else on, I think it has a chance to be one of the most watched college football regular season games ever.
Okay.
So how popular do you think this can get?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
okay, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think
you go ahead.
12 right now sets up to be maybe the most watchable conference we've seen in a long time. If you look around that conference, and now I said this conference goes about 5 deep of great quarterbacks, and we'll see what Shedeur Sanders is. Well, now we can say I think they go 6 deep in great quarterbacks.
Easily.
Okay. So you out of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country, 5 or 6 of them might be out west because Caleb Williams is going to score his points. Bo Nix is going to score his points. Michael Penix Jr. was fantastic today. Shedeur Sanders now with the weapons he has in Colorado. You mix those up, and who knows if Cam Rising comes back and reaches the levels that he's been there at Washington. And I know I'm missing a couple. Even the lesser teams have, Cam Ward is good at Washington State.
Depending on what happens with Oregon State.
There's good quarterbacks throughout that conference. And now you have to look at every game. Like, you could go into every game thinking you're going to see a 52-51 shootout. I mean, the Colorado TCU game might be the norm in the Pac-12 this year.
The way that, we all talked about it. They were talking about it again during the game too, that it's like, we all know the Pac-12 going into this season has the most talented quarterbacks and then, questionable defenses sometimes. USC today, I know they were just playing Nevada, but Caleb Williams had like 300 yards at halftime. Like, these are the things we're going to see every single week. Now, it's to be seen what TCU is going to look like moving forward, but I agree with you, Brandon. I don't think that we're going to see them as a bad team.
Yeah.
However, Colorado getting into that mix, I don't even want to say it hypes it up even more because Colorado already had that hype, but it solidifies because so many people didn't think Colorado could do it. And in week 1, now you can add that to the list.
No, we're going to Alabama next week, and that's great. But it is a real shame that Colorado kind of put the kibosh on us coming out there because it is going to be buck wild crazy in Boulder next week.
No, I think, this may be a crazy statement. Deion has a chance with this team or next year's team to be the biggest story in college football since Johnny Football. I think whatever they do this year sets up next year, and next year they could be fucking incredible because he's going to add more luggage.
He's going to have more Louis. But this is where the transfer portal is going to be talked about because we saw other teams throughout the weekend with a lot of guys in the transfer portal that didn't work out. Colorado just proved that argument is moot. Like, a team won 1 game last year and they came in with 50 different guys and brought his Louis, and look what we're talking about. So the whole transfer portal taking time.
Right there. Let me add to your statement. A team that won 1 game last year just played the national runner-up. Mm-hmm. With 50 transfers and beat them at their place.
And so the whole it takes time for transfer guys to get in and get into a new system. Colorado just told everybody to fuck off with that because it's just not true. It just depends on the talent.
Now, a couple of elements on the other side. TCU absolutely should have won that game if their quarterback played better. Their quarterback threw 2 interceptions on the goal line, and you got to stop throwing to Travis Hunter. Secondly, TCU, this is what happens. This is what happened. They played this exact same game 9 times last year. High scoring, couldn't stop anybody, but they made the play in the end. Well, guess what? You can't live like that every week. When you give a team with good athletes and good players and a good coach a chance, it's going to even out in the end. And I thank God that Deion Sanders has saved us from having to pretend that soft-ass, no-defense playing team in Fort Worth is any good, because they're just not.
Brandon, I had so many moments when I was watching that game thinking about how conflicted you must feel because you were so anti-Colorado being good this year.
No, stop that.
No, not because you're anti-Colorado, because you just didn't think that it was going to happen this year. But you also were over the TCU thing. So I was like, well, he's kind of getting, you're winning on one side. We don't have to talk about TCU all year now.
Everybody wants to say, and Dave's just leading the cheerleaders, everybody wants to say Brandon doubted Colorado. What I said was Deion's going to win big there next year. But I did doubt they could do it today. I did not think they could do it today. So that's right to come at me. And I did not think Shedeur Sanders was going to go from FCS stardom right into superstardom in D1. I did not think that, and they proved me wrong.
That's also just a testament to the fact that we know Travis Hunter only went to Jackson State because Deion was there. These are all Power 5 talented guys. They just went.
I think it's the Shaq meme with me and Shedeur Sanders. It's the Shaq meme. Like, I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game like that. Like,
Shedeur threw balls today and handled himself in a way that I was like, man, he looked like a seasoned pro out there. And he said after the game, he was like, I think that's the most yards I've thrown in any game ever.
Right. I don't think he threw for that much in the FCS.
Or in high school, I think he was even saying, I mean, that there's a chance we look back on TCU and just think, oh man, that was the true disappointment of the season. But Shadeur's ball just looked perfect. I mean, I watched a lot of Jackson State games. He didn't look like that there. Maybe it was just for whatever reason, but
yeah. And this idea that Chandler Morris is going to be as good as Max Duggan, that's done. That's not even close.
Katie, what were you going to say?
We were talking about this in the office. Obviously there's probably some wide receivers, defensive players. When was the last time a quarterback went from the FCS level to the FBS, especially Power 5, and didn't miss a beat, if it even got better? I feel like we've never seen someone just hit the ground running and be fine. There's always been hiccups and adjustment period. Little Cam Ward last year, people thought it was gonna be the next big thing, and it kind of was iffy. Shedeur has to be one of a kind.
Yeah, I think I agree. He's definitely one of a kind. It's just, to me, and maybe it's just because it's we know why he was at the FCS level. It's he had no business being at the FCS level. If his dad wasn't the coach there, he wouldn't have been there. So
that's true.
To me, it's that's the way I feel about Travis Hunter. That's the way I feel about a lot of those guys. But it's Shedeur, yes, was at the FCS level, but he wouldn't have been had Deion not been there.
Well, it's easy to forget. People like to act like, oh, he brought his son and his son's a quarterback because it's his son. But Shedeur was a 4-star recruit.
Right.
He had options.
Yeah, it's just when you say it and you look at it on paper, the narrative is, oh my God, we've never seen this, which is fair, Katie. It's an absolutely fair question. But in reality, it's well, come on, guys. We knew why he was at Jackson State, and it's because Deion was there.
Fair.
But also, no one thought Colorado would be that good. I don't know. I know that every single year we always overreact to what games are going to look like throughout the season, and everything that last year, Florida State LSU, was one of the best games of the season, especially at the time. It was oh my God, this can't get any better. I think that this TCU Colorado game, even though it's in week 1, is going to stand the test of the season of being one of the most important games, because I think it really made a statement, not just for Colorado, but for the Pac-12. It's not going to lose its luster like a lot of these week 1 games normally do.
Well, I mean, Deion said, we coming, and he wasn't lying. Week 1, they stole the show. And that's a fact. They just absolutely stole the show. Now, what will the follow-up be against Nebraska? That's a big key answer. This is not a 1-game season. It's a 12-game season. But anybody like myself who doubted them going into this game certainly has to put that doubt aside and realize that this team is going to be as maybe not as talented as USC's of the world, but they're going to be as talented as most of their opponents, and probably more so. Especially, and I just want to go back to him one more time. Charles Woodson won the Heisman at Michigan, right? Charles Woodson won the Heisman. He had 7 interceptions. He was a very good lockdown corner. He had 1 punt return for a touchdown. I think for that year he had 200 yards receiving and a touchdown. Travis Hunter had 120 yards receiving today. While being a lockdown corner and having the most important interception of the day at the goal line. He is, at the end of the year, I could see him being a top 10 receiver in the country and a top cornerback in the country. He is Shohei Ohtani of college football through 1 game. And this is not a fluke. This is a guy who was the number 1 recruit in the country. He goes to Jackson State, and clearly he fucking loves playing for Deion Sanders.
Right.
And there's no doubt about that. In fact, when the game started, Fox showed – this game was on Fox, right? Fox showed Deion locked in a long hug with number 12, and I just wasn't thinking. I was like, well, look at this coach hugging this quarterback before the game. Oh yeah, it's his son. No, that was Travis Hunter. They were embraced for like 3 minutes before the game.
After the game in the press conference with Jenny Taft, he said he grabbed Shador and said, "My son and my other son," and it was Travis Hunter. So,
and then Shiloh was in the back like, "Yo, Dad, I'm over here, bro."
By the way, like you said, I'm excited that we're going to Tuscaloosa, but I do want it on record for everybody that's listening. It's not Deion's fault that we're not there, because had Dave asked Deion if we could go, we would be in Boulder. It's just Colorado for some reason didn't want us there. So I don't know who hates us in the Colorado athletic department, but Deion was not happy that we're not going to be there.
It's a liberal school. It's a liberal school.
Well, yeah, aren't they all? Okay, so
yep.
Before we move on from this game, though, because I do want like to circle back to TCU and Chandler Morris, and we know the storyline of Max Duggan not being the starter last year until Chandler Morris got hurt, blah blah blah, whatever. That's obviously in the past. What now do you think TCU is going to do, Brandon, in the Big 12? Because I mean, technically,
I don't think they're very good. I don't think they're very good.
You think they're middle of the road?
Yeah, I think they're a middle of the road team. They're probably going to be able to score with some teams, but tough teams are going to give them fits, man. And today showed weaknesses they didn't really have last year. You can beat them to the edge, no problem. Like those running back throws weren't even complicated throws; they were just throwing them out to Edwards, and he was hitting the sideline, and he was calling. Like they don't have end-to-end speed, they don't have lateral speed. Defensively, they're not good at all, and they don't have the magic of last year. I mean, I don't know their schedule off the top of my head, but I know they play a Texas team who I think is just much better than them. I know they play. Hell, I think they're a 6-6, 7-5 team.
So the next game they play Nichols next week.
But again, let me just say this: that is not to downplay Colorado's win. Colorado had one win last season, and they go on the road and beat this team. So if they win 7 games, they win 8 games, they win 9 games. This was a clear statement that hey, the Colorado you knew is no longer, and this is a brand new world. It's the biggest light switch come on from being off of a program that I can remember.
And even if they would have done that today against a cupcake team, like a lot of the big name programs played today, we still would have been able to have this conversation to a certain degree, because it would have been like, wow, did you see Shador had 500 yards? Did you see Travis do that? But it's infinitely better because of who they play.
I think it's just a remarkable break of scheduling for Colorado that they were able to play a team with the spotlight of TCU, with the skill of TCU. I mean, it's not I don't think it's a terrible football team. I think it's a football team with a great, and they go out there and they win. I think it's terrific that this wasn't against, Northern Arizona. This
right.
was against TCU.
You would have had everybody be like, well, let's see them play a real team. Well, you saw them play the national runner.
Nobody else played a real team, so why the fuck should they have? Anyway, we're going to move on from that game, although I think it'll probably come up often as we go forward. As I go through, I'll just break down some takes I had, and we'll get back into the groove of doing this weekly recap. But so when I come up with the second story for today, it's Colorado steals the day, and then so many other teams were just untested, like Georgia, Bama, Michigan. I mean, Michigan didn't look good, but they didn't have to. They won 30-3 or whatever. Ohio State. I'll say this about Ohio State: 23-3 over Indiana. I don't know how you come out of that as an Ohio State fan thinking, all right, well, our offense is just as good as it's been in recent years. Like, they look timid. They look slow. They look like they were not attacking. This is the most tame-looking offense I've seen out of Ohio State in years, and I certainly didn't see a quarterback on that team that's going to scare me if I'm Penn State, if I'm Michigan, if I'm anybody in the Big Ten with skill.
Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best wide receivers in the country, and he had 2 receptions. 2.
Well, Marvin's going to have a tough time this year because, I mean, he's going to be like triple teamed. I got a tweet from Ohio State fan. Somebody said to me, "Do you still think Ohio State doesn't have a quarterback, you fraud?" And I thought,
yeah, sure do.
I thought to myself, I looked at the tweet. I thought to myself, wait a second, did I miss like a explosion in the second half? And was I just not watching? Did it not click in my head? And then I looked at the box score, and I mean, it's not like McCord was awful, but he certainly was not good.
No, he I mean, listen, it's a new quarterback, right? and new quarterbacks have to experience growing pains, but no other Ohio State new quarterback in recent years has really had to experience growing pains. And if they say, oh, it's just Indiana, we don't want to show anything against Indiana. Well, you've opened against teams like Indiana before and beaten them 59-0. No problem. This offense lacked pop. It lacked explosiveness. The tempo they were using was bizarre. Like, I haven't seen an Ohio State offense come to the line that lackadaisically and that methodically in a long time.
You know what? It reminded me of sometimes, like, remember in the game last year against Michigan when they got down, that it looked like they just didn't want to be there half the time because they were losing. And we talked about that after that game, just like what was going on. Like the Ohio State players just seemed to not give a shit. I'm not saying they didn't give a shit today, but there were definitely moments where you're like, they're not clicking. The communication doesn't seem to be there. They can't get on the same page. And like, fine, like they won, but there was never a point in that game where if I was an Ohio State fan, I would be trying to dunk on anybody because that game was disgusting.
Yeah, like the way their offense played, like that trip to Notre Dame, man, that's gonna be awfully tough for Ohio State because that Notre Dame now with the quarterback and the running game, like they've got an offensive balance they haven't had in a long time. And if Ohio State can't go out there and overwhelm somebody with their offense, I just don't know, man. Like Ohio State wasn't impressive. Michigan wasn't impressive. Can I just say something about Michigan? Can I say something about Michigan? Just getting off the bus with free Harbaugh on your fucking shirt. He's missing the 3 easiest games anybody will have scheduled all year, okay?
Yeah, but
he's not in prison. He hasn't died. Get the fuck over yourselves, Michigan. I'm sorry.
I will say the tribute to him, like the formation on the field and holding up the number 4, it did feel like they were like doing a tribute for someone who had passed away.
We didn't do that for Mike Leach in Starkville, and that motherfucker died.
R.I.P. That, I think the free Harbaugh stuff is funny because it's obviously for the internet, obviously going viral. Once they did like the actual like tribute to him, I was like, all right, like we need to relax. I do disagree with you though. I know they won 30-3. They were playing ECU, but I mean, JJ McCarthy was through like 87% completion today. Like he was 26 of 30. Like he had 3 touchdowns. Right, but if we were talking about any team that wasn't Michigan right now, you would give them that credit.
I would not.
Yes, you would.
No, I would not. This is they went out like Alabama. I'm not going to give their quarterback credit for what they did. I'm not going to give Georgia's quarterback credit. Like they went out against a bad team. He went 26 of 30, 280, 3 touchdowns. Yay! This is he got to pad his stats against a bad team. His season will be told when he plays a good defense and he has to make good throws and strong throws. And certainly nothing against East Carolina proves that. They couldn't really run the ball. Like that was weird.
Yeah, Blake Corum had, I think, 70 yards, and I don't. Donovan Edwards, I don't even know if he had 50. But
I had 37.
I quote tweeted, and you brought up Alabama. This is just week 1 overreactions, but there's people of these teams that played nobody, fan bases parading around as if their big questions were answered. I saw somebody tweet out, "Y'all owe Jalen Milroe an apology." No. I can't even get through the sentence without laughing because they played Middle Tennessee. Like
Jalen Milroe was asked to throw 18 times. They won 56-7. There was never a place where they were stressed. He had 7 carries for 48 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but he also had 194 yards passing. What happened with Jalen Milroe today maybe feels good to Alabama fans, but it means not a goddamn thing when Texas comes calling next week. Not a thing.
Do you think, I mean, obviously the conversation of who was going to be the starter, whether it was Buckner or Milroe, and I mean, obviously no one thought it was going to be Ty Simpson at any point, but do you think that we're going to see Jalen Milroe, 100% no doubt against Texas next week?
I think he'll get the first crack, and if he plays well enough to keep it, he'll keep it. And if he doesn't, they'll go pretty quickly to somebody else. I certainly don't think anything happened today proves that he's going to be the guy all year long. The same at Georgia. Like if you want to say Carson Beck this, Carson Beck that, like, okay, you beat UT Martin. I'm certainly not ready to give you the SEC Player of the Year for going out and beating UT Martin and going, let's see, 21 of 31 for 294 and a touchdown. That doesn't blow my skirt up. So whatever. But let's talk about some teams that did at least play a Power 5 opponent, because the big game of the night was Penn State and West Virginia. Penn State wins 38-15. You want to talk about spread drama. It was 31-15. No timeouts for West Virginia. Penn State keeps running plays instead of taking a knee and ends up covering the spread. So for a lot of gamblers out there, James Franklin is probably going to be number one right now. But let's pretend this isn't – we're not talking about gambling. We're talking about football. I thought Penn State – first of all, I said before the game, I don't think West Virginia is as bad as we think they are. They got good running back. They're a little tough. The quarterback's not good enough, but whatever. 38-15 over West Virginia is while it wasn't a knockdown, blow-away performance, it says this is a future national champion. It was good enough. And I thought Drew Aller, there were moments in that game where he did have to make some tough throws and he did have to make some tough plays. And boy, he showed the ability to do that. So while I'm not giving him an A+ and saying this is your Big Ten Player of the Year, I think he was put in situations where he had to come through, and he did. And I think if you're Penn State, you got to know, you got to be comfortable right now that your guy probably can do what he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, he had over 300 yards, so it was definitely a great performance for him. And you definitely were one of the only people that said you didn't think West Virginia was as bad as people were giving them. I mean, I guess discredit for. I said I thought Neil Brown would be fired by the end of this month. That's still to be seen. They still have a pretty tough September schedule, but they definitely showed up a lot better than I expected them to today. And Drew Aller passed that test. Now, we'll see what happens when he's playing in the Big Ten, but of the three quarterbacks, now I think, JJ McCarthy, I still am going to give credit to, even though it was ECU, but of the three quarterbacks, Drew Aller that we've discussed and debated, Drew Aller had the most test today, the biggest test, and he passed the test better than the other two, just simply because they played a better team.
The other nightcap, the big game was North Carolina and South Carolina.
Yay, Katie.
That's fine. Yay, Katie. But Casey, I need you on the carpet.
I got to give up.
No, you're on the carpet right now. You're in the principal's office.
Oh no.
You want to answer for the Spencer Rattler love? Because no.
No, well, first of all, I would like it on record as well that had I known North Carolina was going to use me in their hype video, I would have picked North Carolina.
What hype videos were you in?
Two that I know of, but the OU one. So I saw that I was in the OU one and it scared me a little bit because I kept getting tagged in it. And I thought, oh God, what did I say? And it was actually like a decent clip because it was just setting up Gabe Ikard to talk. But I was like, the main intro voice was very weird. I'll totally take it. That's like the coolest thing ever to me. I would have taken North Carolina simply because they used me in the high video. However, I think that I officially have to put my Spencer Rattler love to rest. I think that and I don't even want to say love, the way it's a drug I can't quit. I've explained it on this podcast. I explained it on the college football show. I don't know what the hold is he's had on me. I think it's died. I don't think he was horrible tonight.
He wasn't.
But did you notice, by the way, I don't know, where you guys were all watching, what sound, I assume the sound was on for that game. They kept talking all night about Spencer Rattler and Drake May being the two best quarterbacks in the ACC and like two of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I was like, are we forgetting Jordan Travis?
Numbers wise, Spencer Rattler had 353 yards. He was 30 for 39. Those numbers check out. First of all, South Carolina couldn't run the ball at all. I mean, they couldn't run the ball. I think they had negative yards rushing against one of the worst defenses in the country from last year. Couldn't run the ball.
Got a lot better.
They have a bad offensive line. But Rattler lacked that. He was put in a situation where he had to put the team on his back and be Superman, and he didn't have that in his bag. So you can't look at this game and say Spencer Rattler really blew it. But no. South Carolina's not very good. As South Carolina outside of Spencer Rattler, and I don't think he's very good, they're just not a good football team.
What's the Xavier? Is it Leggett? Is that their receiver?
Mm-hmm.
He had like almost 200 yards, but I mean, first of all, Spencer Rattler's numbers, like you mentioned, look great. But after halftime, it was just like, all right, this team is not the team that we saw beat Tennessee, beat Clemson. Went into the offseason with all the hype. I still don't think that they're anywhere near as bad as they were at the beginning of last season. I think Spencer Rattler is much better than the beginning of 2022, but it was very clear when you put him up against a team that has a quarterback like Drake May, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, that he's not on that level. I don't know what the broadcast booth was smoking when they kept saying that, because it's just, they're not on the same level of play. But I'm sure South Carolina fans are very disappointed because that game got gross quickly at the end.
Yeah, Katie, I mean, you've poo-pooed the defense so much with good reason. 17 points tonight.
It was good. Like you guys were texting like, "Hey, ready to record, good to go," and I was like, I have to see it. There's 2 minutes left, 2:30, a little under 3. I was like, and everyone else in the gambling cave was like, "Katie, it's over. You're fine." And I was like trying to put my foot down. I was like, "No, no, no, something's gonna happen. It's not gonna do like." I feel cautiously optimistic. The thoughts were there. I think the stat was we had 17 sacks last year. We finished with 8 today. So there is motion, there is progress. Like I'm not fully have the pom-poms yet, but I'm like, okay. Like earlier in the day, I tweeted out like USC, UNC handshake emoji, defense is not doing shit in the offseason. I'm walking that back a little bit. But
so you don't hate how, like, where's your hate meter for Gene Chizik right now?
I have more hate for I don't he's not on the top, he's not on my shit list this week, which I think will be the first time in a while.
Progress, Katie. That's progress.
But it's also like then my question becomes, is this what Spencer Rattler, what USC is this? Like, yes, as Brandon said, this looks to me like a very bad USC team. But how bad?
You know, I feel like I just started off on the wrong foot by saying your Spencer Rattler love was not, it was stupid, Casey. Spencer Rattler played behind maybe the worst offensive line in the country tonight.
Yeah, he did not get.
They were bad.
Yeah, he did not get a lot of protection. That's why, it's like when I say I have to lay my love down for Spencer Rattler, it's not because he went out there and had like 115 yards and 2 or 3 interceptions that were just awful. I mean, he had 0 interceptions. He didn't throw a touchdown pass, but this team, I think the problem with this team, and Shane Beamer still has that spark to him too. I mean, every time he gets a microphone in front of his face, like you're like, damn, I want to run through a wall for this guy.
I realized something about him, Casey. He looks like a grown kid.
You know what? I don't hate that.
He looks like a grown little boy.
Like if he like in a movie, like he's like 12 years old, but he's like in a man's body.
He's got a Herman-esque vibe without the masturbation.
It's a Toy Story one. It's the Sid, the kid who took apart all the toys. Yeah, that's what he looks like.
Wait, didn't Pee Wee Herman just die recently?
He did. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
So did Bob Barker and Jimmy Buffett.
Well, I mean, Bob Barker, legend, obviously Jimmy Buffett. I would put Pee Wee Herman, no disrespect, way lower on that list.
I would go Pee Wee Herman 1, Bob Barker 2.
Get out of here.
Wow, you're just not a fan of Jimmy Buffett, but
he's just trolling.
I know. The UNC, I was just looking at their schedule to be like, oh man, how far can they go into the season where it's really looking like they could be a factor? I would say they are, no matter what. But this is a tough schedule. I mean, they have App State next week, which they lost to last year. Minnesota after that. That's tough.
We lost to App State.
Oh wait, you're right.
They beat them 63-61.
Oh,
sorry, my bad.
Over here.
Yes, correct. But then they play Minnesota, and then they play at Pitt, and then it's Syracuse, Miami, and then their first real game where it's like I definitely know they're gonna win is probably Virginia on October 21st. So I mean, no rest for the Wicked. It's gonna be a tough season for.
Definitely not that expression.
We better beat Minnesota.
No rest for the weary.
You know what, Jack? When you said that, it didn't register to me at all that was wrong. That sounded. It's.
I just want to say before we go on, no, ain't no rest for the Wicked. That's the thing.
Ain't no rest for the Wicked.
100%.
Wait.
Okay, I do not want to get bogged down.
That's a Halsey lyric.
Okay, who's Halsey?
Oh no,
Brandon, you would love Halsey.
I just no, guys, we're missing the plot here. South Carolina fans have to say sorry.
Hey, listen, there's a line out the fucking, as much as Colorado fans can be in my DMs and get on me, there's a line out like goddamn back door of fan bases that ought to be sucking my fucking toes right now. Goddamn Florida fans, hello? South Carolina fans, I fucking told you.
Brandon, first of all, sucking your toes that is not what I expected you to be saying. Florida fans, I was at the airport. He just got up and walked away. I was at the airport after we did the college football show and the big Pizza Hut commercial, and I was watching it before I boarded, and I don't know why I talked myself into it. I was like, Cam Rising's not playing, Graham Mertz, he's got a new breath of life. I'm in. I could not have regretted that faster. And Florida fans were on me again once I started talking shit. I was like, how are you people watching the same game and being okay talking shit to anybody?
Let me tell you something. That's the worst coach team in the country.
Yep.
That is the worst coach team in the country. And I'm going to go back. Dan Mullen had 33 wins his first 3 years. Then he had a bad year. They fired him. And they fired him to hire a guy who, best case scenario, could be 75% as good as Dan Mullen. But he's not 75% as good. He's not 7.5% as good. He is not a good coach. And I thought at the time, I wanted Mississippi State to hire Billy Napier in like 2019 because I thought he was a good coach. He is not. That team the other night, the fact that it's 4th and 3 and you're playing a ranked team on the road and you throw out 2 number 3s on fucking punt coverage and you get a 15-yard penalty and that's a touchdown. Then I think they had like an illegal formation on 3rd and 1 when they were trying to get back in the game. That's shit the junior high school coaches get wrong. That's not shit. We made fun of him for making sure the socks match. Okay, the socks match, but nothing else is taken care of. No details. They have more assistant coaches or whatever coaches. They got like 200 guys in their team picture, and none of them do a goddamn thing. I would be shocked. First of all, they're going to lose to Tennessee in a couple weeks, and then they're going to have a losing record this year. The decommits are going to start rolling in. This is Jeremy Pruitt 2.0 when he had the number 3 recruiting class in the summer, and then it all fell apart. I think Billy Napier doesn't make it through this season.
Billy Napier is the definition of the guy that wanted to come in and change the culture and tried way too hard to deal with things that don't matter on the field.
The culture wasn't that bad. They had one bad year.
I mean, the biggest mistake to fire Dan Mullen. I mean, it's, and it's not like he was horrible. I mean, obviously he said he didn't, the fan base kind of got sick of him, but whatever. But Billy Napier trying to do all these things and be so extra is easy to make fun of, which I did and we all did last season. But then now you look at this team, it's like, so this whole culture change, this whole discipline change that he came in claiming that's what he was doing, where is it? Because he had a whole nother offseason to make these changes look legitimate. And no disrespect to Utah either, because I did find myself doing that when I was watching that game. Thank God it was on DirecTV on the flight. But like, I kept making fun of Florida. I mean, Utah without Cam Rising, I was like, well, I mean, he's the reason that they're really good. They didn't miss a beat. And I understand Florida's not good, but I mean,
hold on,
Utah their flowers too.
I think if Cam Rising had played, they win that game. What they win at 24-11? And Cam Rising plays, they win that game 49-11. Like,
I mean, Utah looked great, and they didn't have their starting quarterback.
They looked okay. Like they don't have a good quarterback outside of Cam Rising, but that's okay. The redshirt freshman's going to get good probably. But
Katie,
like that was that with the backup quarterback and so many starters out for Utah. That's a winnable game for a decent SEC team.
Well, but that's why I'm saying they look great, because like if you just look at that game and even if you knew Cam Rising wasn't playing, you'd be like, all right, whatever, it's fine. Like everything that was stacked up against them, they should have lost that game. Like on paper, they should have absolutely lost that game, and they didn't. They looked great in a situation. Now, granted, it's very hard to play there, but Florida is awful, god awful.
Yeah, one of your darlings is in a fucking war right now.
Well, I know. I actually took Wyoming in that one, but that would be a really tough loss. That's a tough place to play. But yeah, I'm hoping Texas Tech pulls it out just because, that Oregon game, that's next week, right?
Oh man, like Wyoming, I don't know if it's 4th down or whatever, but Wyoming has 3-point lead with 5:14 to go, and Wyoming just got the ball in their own 20. So
yeah,
Katie just sent a stat. Katie, I'll let you read that. That's crazy.
What is it?
Let me pull it up. It's basically when all the coaches hit their 8th game. It took Urban. It was his
8th loss.
8th loss. Yeah, sorry, 8th game for like loss. For Urban is their 39th. It was a 39th game. He was 8th. Billy Napier hit his 14th.
Huh.
Like so bad.
Dan Mullen took 37 games. McElwain 26. Muschamp 26.
Will Muschamp.
Yeah, and Florida fans want to paint this picture that Dan Mullen left a wasteland. He didn't. He left the number 4 pick in the fucking draft last year. So like Napier's in over his head. Napier is not a good coach, and they need to move on as quickly as they can.
They're obviously not Vanderbilt, but are they the second worst team in the East?
No, hold on. Vanderbilt beat this team's ass last year.
Yeah.
and
please don't get Jack started on Vanderbilt. I can't.
Vanderbilt's not good. Like they struggled against Hawaii. They didn't really cruise tonight. They're not good. Florida ain't good either. And like if you get in a war with Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt's at least going to be coached to do the fundamentals correctly. I don't think they're going to be botching just normal shit like Florida was. All right, let me just go through this.
Katie's been trying to say something.
Yeah, when we picked Utah, Florida, remember the only person who picked Utah was
No.
me.
Katie, this is not a me podcast, it's a we podcast. All right.
Well, I see it.
It's easy for him to
Iowa.
say that when his the biggest game of the week he was wrong on, by the way.
I just want to
I
say,
said I was wrong.
I
hand
know.
up. I started off the season with a lot of wrong takes, man.
Listen, we all have. It's the gambling world has not been great to me. I mean, Jack, that UTSA Houston game that all of us were excited about was not fun to watch.
Yeah, well,
I know. I mean, Houston.
that game when he fucking stole it from me.
Also, with all the games that we think are bad, a little devil's advocate, like the Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. What are the odds that they just pulled back the playbook? They knew they were playing
pretty high.
and they just like, we're gonna do 101 fundamentals, not put.
But I'm not pointing at those teams and saying you were, well, maybe Ohio State. I'm not pointing at those teams and saying you were disappointing. I'm pointing at those teams and saying you proved nothing because you had to prove nothing. You came out in week one, played a nobody. Why are we supposed to get excited? Like Michigan, you won 30-3. It means it's just give me something.
But Ohio State was
disappointing. I thought. I mean, like if whether you wanted Devin Brown or Kyle McCord, I don't think you're celebrating tonight thinking, "Oh my God, we found our guy." I just don't think you're doing that. Going forward a little bit, we'll mention some other teams, then we'll get into who won the week, who lost the week, and all that. Iowa's still very much Iowa. They scored 14 points in the first 5 minutes, and you think, "Oh my goodness, here we go." They finally got an offense. They got a quarterback. Yeah, they won. They scored 24 points, and they won an ugly, just gross, boring game. Tennessee won 49-13 over Virginia. Virginia might be the worst Power 5 team in the country. That's just troubling to watch Virginia play football. Their right tackle might be the worst player in America. God bless him. Milton looked pretty good, but I tell you what I saw out of Tennessee that gives me pause for them the rest of the year. I saw Milton make a lot of great throws. I saw him make a couple bad throws, but I saw him make a lot of great throws. But his receivers are not what they were last year. His receivers were dropping balls. They were not getting separation as much. His receivers have definitely taken a step back from Hendon Hooker's receivers. Now, you might work into a rhythm and be okay because Joe Milton threw one ball, I think in the second quarter, and it was dropped by Ramel Keaton, and it might have been the prettiest ball I've seen in college football the last 5 years. It was just arc, spin. He throws a beautiful football. He does, but
he throws the football like they would.
SEC teams, those receivers need to be better than they were today.
He throws a football like they would slow motion in movies. You know, like when they show the quarterback like
his future career might be stuntman for throwing the football in a football movie. Yes.
Yeah, he drops back and he like goes to throw, and then like the camera pans and it's just a perfect, beautiful spiral. That's Joe Milton.
Speaking of stuntman, that Pizza Hut commercial is going to go crazy, right?
It's going to go crazy. First of all, Pizza Hut is legit. And I'm not just saying that because we were in that commercial. When they gave me the ability to order Pizza Hut in the city and I could get stuffed crust, then when I was told I would be the star in a Pizza Hut commercial and I would have my own stunt man. Oh,
I mean, I was in the commercial, so I doubt you were the star.
Katie and Jack, I need to tell you this. Just the three of us. Not Brandon is not in the room. I have a video of Brandon trying to, and let me say this loudly, eat pizza and looking like an absolute asshole. Like,
Casey, you got to eat the pepperoni pizza. Dan got to eat the meat lovers. I had to eat Supreme and look cool. I had mushrooms and peppers. Okay.
I had to walk away from the set because I was afraid I was going to say something to him that would get us in trouble with the clients because all the clients were there. You would think this man has never eaten pizza in his entire life. It was, I mean, I can't say this. I'm okay. Move on because I'm going to get myself in trouble.
I want to pull out before we go forward. It has to feel like Groundhog Day for Nebraska, right? Like Nebraska fans, they for 75% of that game, it looked like they were in control, at least the middle part, and then towards the end, it looked like they were in control. And then they just blew it. They 4:53 left. They got the ball in a 7-point lead, and they fumble. Okay, Minnesota comes down, and one of the most Daniel Jackson makes maybe the catch of the weekend. 4th and 10, catches the ball, drags his feet, unbelievable catch, ties the game. Nebraska gets it, has a chance to win it, throws an interception, loses the game. So it's Groundhog Day. Matt Rule might eventually build something, but Nebraska, more than any team in the country, just knows how to lose.
And I do.
They do. That's the truth.
They do. I when I was watching that game, of course, it's like easy to make fun of, and you see Will Compton like losing his shit on Twitter. They were playing, Minnesota. Minnesota is not it's not like they lost to App State per se. Like Minnesota is
and they lost on the road as well.
Yeah, Minnesota is a good team. We obviously have seen them, in the past few years be a lot better, but it's easy to make fun of because they lost the way that they did, but it wasn't a team that I was like, damn, Nebraska had no business losing to them. I mean, losing to Minnesota is not that big of a deal.
In the ACC, I'll just go through this real quick. In the ACC, Wake Forest 37-17 over Elon. NC State the other night beats UConn by 10. I thought UConn acquitted themselves fine. Miami 38-3 over Miami of Ohio. I think if you're a Miami fan, you saw what you wanted to see. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, Miami, I mean, I think they really, let's not forget last year they lost to Middle Tennessee. They didn't always handle those games great. That was a really, dominant performance, the defense. And I mean, is that next week?
Miami, Texas A&M is next week.
Yeah.
It is.
Next week,
I mean,
is loaded.
I mean, man, and we'll get to Texas A&M. They also took care of business as well. I know we don't have a lot of data points right now but they did what they had to do.
Louisville 39-34 Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech controlled a lot of that game, but Louisville made the plays in the end, came back and won. Tennessee 49.
Are we surprised? Can we
Go
talk about
ahead.
Louisville for a second? What they were third in odds win the ACC. They're getting all this hype, and then they had to pull like a miracle comeback in the second half.
The problem with Louisville is this. All the hype about them was because their schedule was easy. It wasn't about their personnel, and they got a lot of transfers, and it wasn't about anything. It was, we have an easy schedule. And I think if that's your calling card, I don't think there's a lot of meat on that bone. But they did come back and win. And listen.
They did. They had a pretty strong haul in the transfer portal.
Good haul, but I think it's mostly based on that week schedule.
I mean,
it was
they were 7.5 point favorites and they won by 5, and they almost won by 11.
That's true, Jack. But they were also down most of that game. I don't think anybody felt like Georgia Tech was going to come out and have a 28-16 lead or a 16 whatever. But it is what it is. Tennessee 49, UVA 13, Northern Illinois. Jack. Listen, I have never seen a fan base dumber on Twitter, and this includes Arkansas, than Boston College fans. Their idea of smack talk is to send you pictures of furries, okay? And they have followed me around telling me Phil Jerkovich isn't good, Boston College this, Boston College that. And Northern Illinois walks in Chestnut Hill and beats them 27-24 in overtime. So I'm going to say it for Jack, and on behalf of myself and Jack and Casey and Katie, Boston College fans, fuck you, you mediocre pieces of shit. Fuck you.
Mediocre may be giving them too much compliments. Losing to Northern Illinois, that was the highlight of the day for me. Beautiful. Nobody was there. Somebody tweeted me they weren't showing the student section. The student section, nobody goes to you outside of one game of the year. None of those kids go to a Boston College football game. Maybe they go to tailgate, but guess what? Boston College is a failure of an athletics program. They had a lead on everyone and they blew it, and they're an embarrassment to the state of Massachusetts and the ACC.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for because the fact that was Jack's highlight is great. Do you know how I wish I was watching the Rutgers game with Jack tomorrow, just because that energy is just going to carry over to that standalone Sunday Northwestern Rutgers game.
Nobody wants to watch that game. We're all going to watch it. Pitt 45, Wofford 7. Handle business there. Colgate, Syracuse 65, Colgate nothing. North Carolina 21, South Carolina 17, and Virginia Tech comes out and just thumps ODU, which is shockingly a pretty big win for them. I mean, that's a good start to their season, I think, for a Virginia Tech team who kind of looks lifeless. Going to the Big 12 now, we've got currently. I went to the Big Sky accidentally. That didn't make sense. I wondered why. I'm so stupid.
Currently, who's playing?
Texas Tech, by the way, with the ball down. They're down 20-17 to Wyoming, so maybe that'll end while we're on the show. BYU 7-0 at halftime over Sam Houston State. UCF just destroys Kent State 56-6 the other night. Kansas 48-17. Kansas took a while to get going, but once they did, they got going. Colorado goes to TCU and wins. Oklahoma 73-0 over Arkansas State.
Holy shit.
Butch Jones, man.
My God, what a fall from grace. Not that he was ever that high up, but
I'm not putting this energy in the world to be a bad guy. But I do think there might come a time this year, if Oklahoma doesn't go like 10-2 or 11-1, there will come a time where the fan base will demand Jackson Arnold, who was the backup. Dylan Gabriel was electric today, 19-22 or something like that. Jackson Arnold was 11 for 11 and was perfect when he came in. Now, Arkansas State just provided zero resistance whatsoever.
that game was the ultimate punching bag game of just like all offseason. Oklahoma had to hear about how bad they were and how Brent Venables is on the hot seat. And I mean, again, shout out the intro to their hype video was me asking what number of wins Venables has to have for it to be a successful season. Like that's all they're thinking about. So they were just like, you know what, we're going to come in and we're going to treat these people like absolute shit.
No, I was wondering how many times you'd mentioned the hype video. Okay. So
If you, by the way, if you were in a hype video, that's all we would ever talk
I'm in
about.
a lot of hype videos. It's just me getting embarrassed and looking bad.
Really?
Whenever maybe I'm not in a lot, but whenever I do show up, it's me just hating on somebody. So Iowa State 30, Northern Iowa 9, Cincinnati 66, Eastern Kentucky 13. Texas just sleepily runs through Rice 37-10. Houston beats UTSA in just one of the most boring games I've ever seen. 17-14. And Jack said it was going to be one of the most exciting games.
So
Can you
did
believe
I,
that?
Jack. Wait, before we move on from Texas,
here's a team. Here's a team, Casey. Gross Baylor.
Oh God.
Texas State 42, Baylor 31. Like, you're in year, what, 4 now of Dave Aranda? You won the Big 12 2 years ago. You took a step back last year, but okay, step back one thing. Now you're starting year 4 by getting beat at home by Texas State. Like, that's not good.
No, that's really bad. And I mean, every state probably has this, but you know, in Texas, it's like there are the tiers, right? Regardless of what you want to think of, like the big brands versus not, like there are the tiers of schools that you do not lose to in Texas. Texas State is multiple tiers below, I think, what people would think Baylor is. But going back to Texas, that it was sleepily, like you said. Was there any point when you were watching that game? I knew they would beat Rice, because that's another example. Texas should never even be in a dogfight with Rice. Never. There were points in that game in the first half where I was like, oh no, are we all wrong about Texas? I got over it, but there was definitely a feeling of like, are we jumping in?
All I could see in their players' eyes were the Alabama logo. That's all. I think their season starts next week. I mean, what I've liked to see as a Texas backer, what I've liked to see them winning that game 56-3. Yeah, sure, but there was nothing to it. Kansas State 45, Southeast Missouri nothing. Oklahoma State 27, Central Arkansas 13, and West Virginia loses, of course, to Penn State. We move on to now what, the Big Ten? Yes, we do. We move to the Big Ten. That's the next conference. What did I do that time? I went to CUSA. I think this phone's fucked up, man.
Would you like me to do it? I have it up if you'd like me to.
Do it. Just Minnesota 13 over Nebraska, 13-10 over Nebraska. Michigan State 31, Central Michigan 7. Don't let that fool you. Central Michigan was in that game for most of it. Like, I don't think that was a 31-7 game. It ended up that way. I certainly wasn't impressed with Michigan State. Michigan 30, East Carolina 3, excuse me. Iowa 24, Utah State 14, in the most Iowa game that ever Iowa. Fresno goes on the road. Solid Mountain West team in probably the second best game of the day. And they beat Purdue 39-35. Ohio State 23, Indiana 3. The more I look at that score, the more I'm just mystified. Like, in no world did I think Ohio State would come out and score 23 points against Indiana. Hell, they were favored by 30, and they scored 23.
It was a gross game for Ohio State.
I'd like to know the last time Ohio State scored 23 points in a win. I know they probably scored – I think they scored 23 last year against Michigan in a loss, and 21 2 years ago to Michigan in a loss.
I was literally looking it up as you said it, because I don't know either. I think maybe that Notre Dame game last year, they only scored 21. Yeah.
That was it. But that is against Notre Dame and not Indiana. Maryland 38, Towson 6. Maryland's a pretty solid team, I think. Wisconsin kind of sputtered a little bit, 38-17 over Buffalo. Illinois
That
pulls
was
out.
Katie's game of the week, by the way. Never forget that of any game of the week that Katie could watch outside of LSU, Florida State, it was that one.
Well, Morrell was just right. It was like everyone's like, okay, all the transfers are going to hit instantly, and it took them some time to get going.
Well, I think it wasn't the fucking. I mean, the passing game that we expected to see just wasn't what did it. It was the running game. They had two guys over 100. I think Braylon Allen and Malusi were both over 100. Illinois 30, Toledo 28. Illinois really had to pull it out of the fire at the end, and then Penn State obviously beats Western Virginia. Western Virginia.
Yes.
What the last
Western Virginia.
Last thing on Ohio State, Indiana. I just looked it up. The last time Ohio State scored 23 points or less against Indiana was 1993.
My God.
Huh, wow, that's been a minute. All right, that was the year Casey graduated high school, I believe.
That was the year you graduated high school.
It's the year I started high school, actually.
No, you didn't.
93, I started high school, yeah.
God, you're old.
I was in ninth grade in 93, and I graduated.
I was 4 in 1993.
Okay, just relax. Vanderbilt, hold on. Missouri 35, South Dakota 10 in the SEC. Utah 24, the rotting corpse of Florida 11. Tennessee 49-13 over Virginia. Kentucky covered on the last play of the game, by the way. They were big favorites, and they covered on the last play of the game with a big run, 44-14 over Ball State. Arkansas cruises against Western Carolina, 56-7. Ole Miss scores 73, and Spencer Sanders is still the dumbest player in America because Jackson Dart is their starter and is good, and I have no idea why he wasted his last year eligibility to go hold Jackson Dart's nuts in practice. Auburn 59, UMass 14. This was a sexy bet for a lot of people after UMass played well last week. They liked UMass plus 35, and Auburn killed them. Mississippi State 48, Southeastern Louisiana 7. We were pretty mediocre the first half, but we won by the same score as Georgia. So Georgia wins 48-7 over Tennessee Martin. Mississippi State 48-7 over Southeast Louisiana. Georgia and Mississippi State henceforth are the same team.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M 52, New Mexico 10, Vanderbilt 47, Alabama A&M 13. South Carolina loses like a bunch of bitches, and then 56-7 Alabama over Middle Tennessee State. And we finish out the Power 5 roundup in the Pacific 12, which is now the Pacific 2, which is soon to be the Pacific whatever. We'll talk about that stupid. We'll talk about the ACC's dumb shit. Nobody wanted this ACC. Nobody wants to see SMU and Cal in your fucking conference. Don't talk about it, guys. We'll talk about it next time. But fuck, nobody wants this shit.
The way that I just watched you get
the Patriots scored. Arizona is up 21-3 over Northern Arizona right now in the third quarter. UCLA up 14-6. Coastal's giving them a game. San Jose State and Oregon State play tomorrow. Utah wins. Arizona State beats Southern Utah. Stanford.
In the UCLA game, Dante Moore actually has been playing, as well as Chase Garbers. Dante Moore's thrown for a touchdown, and Chase Garbers is also thrown for a touchdown. Obviously, it's halftime. We'll talk more about that on Monday, but he's definitely playing two guys.
Colorado, what they do, yes.
No, I was gonna say, wasn't Dante Moore hurt or no? No. Why did I think he was hurt?
Oregon scores the most points of anybody, 81-7 over Portland State, not Presbyterian. I think it's a Presbyterian earlier. Washington 56-19 over Boise. That's an impressive win. I don't think Boise's bad, and Boise was giving them fits for about a quarter and a half. Penix is just so good. They just keep throwing deep and keep throwing deep and keep throwing deep. They're going to make you defend deep all night. They're good.
450 yards and 5 touchdowns for Michael Penix Jr.
They're really fucking good. And they just, like, it wasn't working at first, but they just keep at it. You got to defend them 60 yards at a time, every time. That's crazy. USC 66, Nevada 14, Washington State 50, Colorado State 24. So that's where we're at on those. I think we'll get to who won, who lost the weekend right now. I wonder if we're going to sweep the board on who won the weekend, but we'll see. So Casey Smith, we start with you. Who won the weekend?
Brandon Walker, that would be one. Deion Sanders and Colorado. I obviously you could pick apart Colorado and pick a million different winners at this point, but I'm just going to go with Deion because, you know, he loves to be flashy. He's prime time. He's been that way his entire career. And there were so many moments, even when guys started transferring out and all the clips were going viral all off season, that it was just like, all right, Deion, like you're giving a lot of people a lot of fodder if this fails. And in week one, he already got all of his money's worth. I mean, Colorado's getting their money's worth. We talked about how he won the offseason just because he was like the headlines for Deion in Colorado were more than everybody else combined. And he goes in and beats the national runner-up last year, even though it's a different team in TCU. And then everyone that hates him has to shut up. You have to shut up. If you hate Deion Sanders and you hate the idea of winning, you have nothing to say today. And he did that against a team that was impressive. The whole thing was impressive. Deion won. Also, by the way, Colorado just looked cool as shit today. They've always had cool colors. I mean, black, gold, and white looks good. Bold looks good, but like they looked fucking awesome today.
Jack, who won the weekend?
Yeah, Travis Hunter. I think he proved. I said it earlier. I think he proved himself as the best player in college football right now. Not named Caleb Williams, probably. Just dominant.
I mean, I have no problem naming him with Caleb Williams in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, he played 110 snaps, just dominant. Really impressive. Can't wait to watch him the rest of the year. Hope he stays healthy.
I gotta say it again. Well, hell, I can say it in a minute when I do it. Katie, who won the weekend?
Travis Hunter. I think every one of their moms was talking about him. That's the number one storyline. He proved the haters wrong.
So I'll change mine because y'all both went with Travis Hunter, who I was going to go with. But to add on to the Travis Hunter point, I don't think it can be ignored that, again, guys like Champ Bailey, guys like Charles Woodson have done this before where they went both ways. But Charles Woodson was never the best receiver on the field. He was just kind of there helping out. Travis Hunter goes on the other side. When he lines up on offense, he's the best player on offense and he's the best player on defense. Like, that's unheard of. I don't know that when Miles Jack, who was a great linebacker, went and played running back, I don't think he was the best running back in the country. Like, he wasn't in the mix for that. He was good, but he wasn't elite like Travis. Travis Hunter's elite on both sides, and that's wild.
I just don't understand how someone doesn't get tired.
I don't either. And not only get tired, it's one thing to be a running back and run 3 or 4 yards in a play. The DBs and receivers are running more than anybody on the field. They're running 20, 30, 40, 50 yards every play almost. So
it's just unhuman. Yeah. It's unhuman.
All right. I'm going to change mine, but it's easy because you chose Deion Sanders. You guys chose Travis Hunter, and I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders. I said on the show this morning, Shedeur Sanders at Jackson State was a nice quarterback, but I don't know if he showed enough to show that he's going to walk into the Pac-12 and be one of the best quarterbacks. I think he's going to have to grow into it. No, that son of a bitch walked right in there. That motherfucker walked right into major college football as one of the best quarterbacks in the country on this day. 510 yards on the road. I don't care if you're playing against air. 38-47 for 510 and 4 touchdowns is damn elite. I didn't know that he was going to be that. I said he wouldn't be that this early. And guess what? He came out, and if you were given a quarterback award for he'll probably be the National Offensive Player of the Week. Like, that's how good he was. And I think he won a lot of respect today, and Shedeur Sanders is that guy. So all right.
The fact that there was
Texas Tech and Wyoming are headed to overtime, by the way.
The fact that there was a conversation like that's, and granted, I mean, it's easy to overreact for the Heisman every week, but like I saw people tweeting like legit people, not just assholes on Twitter, legit people being like, so are we going to see a situation where Shedeur and Travis Hunter might split Heisman votes?
Early for that, however.
It's funny to even like that we're having this conversation because of how good they were today. Like, no one would have anticipated that outside of that Colorado locker room.
The only thing I will say about that and about us gushing over Colorado, because it is week 1, we overreact, is, and you've made fun of me for this a lot. In 2020, KJ Costello was the week 1 Heisman winner.
Oh, I did do that.
Remember that? No, that happened.
Well,
he threw for 623 yards and 5 touchdowns against LSU, and then nothing.
Brandon, I think I made fun of you because you said he was going to win the Super Bowl.
No, you made fun of me for winning the Heisman. You brought that up a lot. You know how you get on your bullshit.
He could win the Super Bowl still. Like, it's possible.
It is possible.
You can't rule it out.
Yeah, like
he would probably need to be in the league, but
yeah, it's possible.
when the day started, I believe, what's his name? The
Billy
defensive back.
Oh.
No, the defensive back, Travis Hunter. I'm trying to find him now. But when the day started, I think he was 50,000 to 1. And I'm using the Barstool Sportsbook app right now. He is now plus 4,000. He was plus 50,000 this morning, which is but right now he is like 12th on the Heisman odds, and he was barely on it this morning. And I know everybody in our room when we were streaming, we all took it. I think I put down $20 to win 2,000. But like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders right there with him. He's Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter have the exact same Heisman odds right now as Marvin Harrison Jr. That's how far they came today.
Wild.
They have better odds right now than Blake Corum.
It's crazy because no one expected that, again, outside of Boulder, but it's just like, well, yeah, if you watch that game and you watch the rest of the stuff that happened around the country, I mean, obviously we see 2 top 10 teams play tomorrow, so we'll see, but like, it's very clear, like these categories that we're doing, like we could heavy sweep across the board, only Colorado, like,
yeah.
Who lost the weekend? Like, I'm not going to do it because it's like ad nauseum, but it's like the Deion Sanders haters. I mean, they're mad, they're furious, but I'm going to go with Florida fans.
I didn't ask you. Casey, who lost the weekend?
I would say the Florida fans, Brandon, the Florida Gators, the fans of that team. It's always fun to mix it up with different fan bases throughout the offseason. And whether it's, you believe it or not, Florida fans were very high that last year was just like, hey, and he needs to get his team in here. Billy Napier is going to turn it around. And for it to be a standalone game too, opening week, week 1, Thursday night, and just to watch the way that team played, like there's nothing to be excited about if you're a Florida fan right now. Like, just anytime the whole country gets to watch you fail the way that they failed, it sucks.
Jack Mack, who lost the weekend?
Sorry, I was listening to Chip Kelly complain about the new rules. Boston College, loser of the weekend, without a doubt. Florida has definitely a case. TCU has a case, but man, Boston College has got to be looking at themselves like, what do we do? There was definitely some hype behind Hafley. I think Hafley even got some NFL calls. Man, he's looking bleh right now. And Boston College is looking bleh. Can't wait to beat him later in the year. It's going to be sweep the Northeast again. Boston College, UMass, we're coming, and it's going to be good.
Katie Stats, who lost the weekend?
Going a little out of pocket for this one, I don't have a true one. I'm saying lost as in sucks for them. My loser of the week is whoever's in the Oregon mascot, because they had to do 564 push-ups today with 81 points scored. That's gotta suck. Great problem to have.
So every time they score a touchdown, they do the number of points on the board?
Yeah, 564, I think, was the total amount of push-ups they had to do.
So who was more athletic today, him or Travis Hunter?
I'm going to go with the duck. He did it. Travis Hunter was great, but he didn't do it in a full duck costume.
No.
That's hot.
Now watch next week, Travis Hunter come out in a full ass duck costume,
just doing like 1,000 push-ups. Brandon, who lost the weekend?
I think we did. I think everybody that loves college football, the college football watching population, lost the weekend, because as great as we can give the flowers to Deion and everybody, we can give it to them. And Deion, you stole the weekend. It's yours. There's not even a close second because nobody played anybody, man. Nobody, and there was some bad football. Utah and Florida was bad. There was just, Utah had like 8 starters out and their backup quarterback. They had an excuse. Florida was bad. Nebraska, Minnesota was ugly. Like, there's some badass football today. It was just Houston UTSA was an abomination. And again, I'll say it again, like I said it an hour ago. If college football is headed towards this made for primetime stuff and TV networks are calling the shots and they're moving this team to this conference, this team to this conference, well, God damn it, when we get to week 1, give me something. You gave me Colorado and TCU and nothing else. It was pathetic, the slate of games we had. We can only talk about Colorado because guess what? Look elsewhere in the top 10 outside of Florida State and LSU who play tomorrow. What can I say about Georgia? What can I say about Alabama? What can I say about Ohio State? What can I say about Michigan? Nothing, because there's nothing to fucking talk about with those teams. And those are the standard bearers of this sport. I promise you, the NFL is never going to give us a week one where their marquee teams don't play anybody, because that's just dumb business. All right. Shit list time. And we will start with Casey.
Yeah. No, I was going to say start with Jack because
We're going to start with Jack on the shit list.
I kind of teased it earlier, but the overreaction from fans in week one, especially against the low tier FBS team, G5 or FCS team, saying, hey guys, you need to apologize to XYZ. I saw it with Jalen Milroe today. You guys are just the worst type of fans. I understand you're supposed to be excited, but I'm not apologizing to Jalen Milroe anytime soon. I mean, I guess next week if he goes off. But yeah, overreaction fans against, if you played FCS Southeast today, I don't want to hear anything about your team, to be honest. Also, Mel Tucker, you're on the shit list. A player got stretchered off the field and you put him back in the game later in the game. I don't know what that was all about, but Mel Tucker on the shit list.
Mel Tucker's always on his shit list.
Yeah, let's say Jack versus Michigan State. I never want to die. I never want it to happen. I don't want Mel Tucker to get fired just so Jack can continue to talk shit about him.
Katie Stats.
The NCAA. Tez Walker. Dude, free the man. Sick of it. If JT Daniels at his fourth school and he's fine, Tez Walker's not, get bent. NCAA is on my shit list for today, tomorrow, and always.
We got one too. Jaquavius Spivey found out yesterday. He found out yesterday he can't play.
The NCAA sometimes feels like they're just like the bored housewife that's like looking for problems.
Looking for attention, yeah.
Yeah, they're like sitting at home. They're like, you know what? Things are it's too quiet around here. I've got to stir up some drama. And then they just find somebody to get to fuck over. Like
doing that on the Friday of Labor Day weekend is craziness.
Crazy.
Especially when they've had nothing to do the whole summer.
Well, they're bored.
Case.
Also, to add on to Brandon's point about the bad slate, the games with the time stoppage rule, the games themselves are shorter, but the time they take up is the same. There are more ads everywhere because of this. It's still the same runtime for the entire game. There's just more ads.
Speaking of ads, we didn't mention this. The fact that Deion was on every single commercial during the TCU Colorado game was hilarious.
No.
We're gonna get sick of it.
No. It's not hilarious. This is risky business. This could turn into Baker Mayfield. Don't you remember the year Baker Mayfield was on every commercial and he was in the midst of throwing more interceptions than touchdowns?
Yes,
the risky business.
It's just funny to me because you're watching this game, he could have been in zero commercials. We would have talked about it, but it was just the man's making his money. So this is a weird shit list for me because I'm happy that it's happening, but I need to retroactively remind everybody that Jimbo Fisher not getting an offensive coordinator for all the years he's been at A&M and calling plays, he's on my shit list for just now doing it. However, I know that they just played New Mexico. Still, A&M struggled last year. I mean, deep into the season. I realized they beat LSU at the end of the season, but they were struggling against UMass. That offense could never get going. That was the biggest problem last year, was that the offense was from the 80s. He always had all of his notebooks. And I don't know what Bobby Petrino is going to look like when they get into SEC play. But watching Connor Wegman and watching Evan Stewart and watching that team today actually look competent on offense to start this season was awesome. And we'll see. But winning by 42 points, Jimbo, thank God you got an offensive coordinator. You're on my shit list for not doing it sooner. But I'm putting everything in the past. I tweeted it before the game. I don't care what happened in 2022. I don't care what's ever happened in the history of A&M football. I'm back, baby. I'm back. Uh-oh. Oh, you were waiting for me. I was like, why are you doing this? Brandon, your shit list.
My shit list goes
Uh-oh.
to the selfish motherfuckers who wouldn't let me drive home and do this so I could go to bed right after, okay? I wanted to drive home and do this podcast and go to bed. But now I got to drive home at fucking midnight. That's okay. That's not really my shit list.
Brandon, also,
No,
we said you could go home. What are you talking about?
Y'all gave me the third degree. Okay.
What? I get an hour 40 commute after this.
No, I don't. I have a 48-minute commute.
She does.
Hour 40. I win. Continue with your shit list.
I have, if we're all keeping score, I have a 6-month-old who's surely going to wake up at like 2 or 3 hours.
Brandon Walker, what's your shit list?
Thank you. It's the Florida Gators. Listen. And I almost want to split it with South Carolina fans, because boy, did y'all have fun with that marquee of the fucking state or whatever saying Brandon Walker don't know ball, Brandon Walker don't know ball. Oh, you don't know ball, you don't know ball. Oh no, I know ball. And what you motherfuckers put on the field tonight was not ball, sir. Y'all were a bunch of fucking limp cocks against a decent team. Like North Carolina's probably decent. You scored 17 points, you non-ball knowing motherfuckers at South Carolina. Anyway, but it ain't you. It's Florida. Florida fans, man, you have been after it. Why you love Dan Mullen so much? Why you love Dan Mullen? Billy Napier is good. He's recruiting well. You got the worst coach in the country. Billy Napier couldn't coach a goddamn men's league softball team. Like, you're disorganized. You're bad. This motherfucker thought the answer was going out and get Graham goddamn Mertz. That'll fix it. That's what I couldn't win games with the number 4 pick in the draft. You know who I can win games with? Wisconsin's motherfucking failure of a quarterback, Graham Mertz. That's what will happen. Florida fans, you've been bamboozled. You've been hoodwinked. You have been absolutely fooled. You got a bad coach, and you need to get rid of his ass now. And you say, well, you have number 3 recruiting class in the country. Yeah, for now, until those motherfuckers watch TV in the next couple of weeks and see you lose to Tennessee and everything. Florida's on my shit list. There we go. Well, that felt good.
I'm clapping. I would do a standing ovation, but I'm not wearing pants. So,
Wow.
Okay. Well, there's your clip, Jack. Okay.
Yeah, you should have put that at the beginning of the podcast.
Now, yes, next time we do the podcast this late at night, you have to announce to all the horny male listeners that you're not wearing pants from the beginning, just so we can
to loop them in.
So anyway, Florida State LSU later tonight. It certainly was the game of the weekend last year. So I'm hoping it saves us and gives us something very memorable. And Duke Clemson as well. That has a chance to be pretty good. So,
and I know that it's going to be a gross one. I've said gross a million times this podcast, but Northwestern Rutgers has a chance to be like epically bad.
I almost just don't want to watch it, but I'm going.
Yes, you do. You want to hate yourself just like all of us want to hate ourselves and watch that game. Don't lie to yourself.
At that point, we're all on the sickos committee, aren't we? So that's week 1 for now. We'll be back Monday to talk about the games that have not happened yet. But otherwise, that's week 1. That's college football. And anybody got anything to add?
One question. Do you see the video with Mac Brown and Beamer after they met on the field, and Mac Brown kind of grabs Beamer's neck to turn him back around? I'm taking that as like just the most disrespectful thing.
I took it as like your grandpa at, like, I tweeted this out from the main account, your grandpa at the cookout or something like that, where you're trying to get away from him. Like, he's been talking to you all day. And then he's like, no, I'm not finished with you. Like, I don't think it was disrespectful. It was more so like, Mac Brown's the oldest guy we got. And man, oh man, he is old and he's going to act old.
Let me shout him out, because I think today
he
became the first coach ever with 100 wins at 2 schools.
Mm-hmm.
He had 138 wins at Texas, and today was his 100th win at North Carolina.
And he had a game day sign that said Mac Brown farts dust.
All right.
I love Mac Brown. Also, the man can still run. He can still move. After his halftime interview, I noticed he can just jog like no problem.
All right. That should do it then. That's your week 1 show. We'll end it here. That was fun, and that was Unnecessary Roughness.